This is the second fantasy chat. For the first one, I had director Josh Boone, and for this one, I am having legendary booktuber and someone I aspire to equal their content quality one day, and that is Merphy Napier.
My golly.
I hope I'm saying your last name right. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So your videos always look and sound like perfect. Do you have any tips or tricks for people who want to get started, and AKA me?
I mean, I think we use all the same equipment, Daniel. We both have the same like box lights, and yeah, that's exactly what I use. And I have the same lapel mic you have, though you don't use it in every video. I use a mic or a lens that has really good bokeh effect. So a lot of people like that.
I don't know what bokeh means.
I'm crisp, and my background is blurry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't know any other term for it other than bokeh because I'm married to a photographer. But I don't know. I think that's pretty much all I do. Not anything too fancy.
All right. Well, you have been a booktuber for, I think you, Elle, and I all started roughly around the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that true? I'm 2.5 years old. Is that how old you are?
I'm about 3, and I think Elle is right in between there as well. And you kind of do the fantasy reviews, fantasy discussion, and bleed into other genres as well. And I kind of wanted to ask you about, have you noticed any real differences talking about fantasy books on YouTube versus talking about romance literature, general fiction, biographies, whatever you've talked about? Is there a community difference in how the discussion typically goes?
Yes and no. I didn't start out as a fantasy booktuber. I actually, when my channel was pretty young, I openly and avidly said, I don't like fantasy and I don't like reading it. Yeah, funny story. And that's obviously shifted, as that's my main genre of choice now. And I do notice that when I review, like my dedicated reviews, when I review a fantasy series or novel, the response I get, the views I get, the interaction I get is much more. I get a lot more responses. I get a lot more passionate responses. I really love dedicated reviews for fantasy books. And I don't do a lot of dedicated reviews outside of the fantasy genre, but just general wrap-ups, discussions, reading vlogs, general discussion. I get a lot of positive feedback every time I try to dip into another genre. My thing is, I really don't want to only be in one place personally. And so if there's any genre that I haven't given very much attention to, haven't given a fair try, I ask my subscribers, okay, give me recommendations within this genre. And then I make a list and I try a lot of books. And my subscribers love that I'm trying some of their genres that they love, that I'm giving it a chance, that I'm listening to them about what they want to read. So I get a lot of, I really don't get any pushback no matter what I read. But I enjoy fantasy the most. And so it is my main topic of discussion.
So what caused the change from saying you didn't like it at all to what you like it now? What was the initial hatred from? And you read a couple things you just really didn't like? And yeah. What series caused you to flip?
Okay, so going way back, when I was in middle school, maybe even before middle school, fantasy was my genre. It was all I read. High school, it was all I read. Fantasy was my life. And then I took a break from reading altogether for several years. I kind of just forgot that I was a reader, most depressed time in my life. And it was actually getting back into reading that was a big part of helping me get back into a better place mentally, because reading is just such a calming, settling, interactive thing. And I don't know, I guess I must have just tried out a few duds when I was getting back into reading, and I picked up several fantasy books that I just didn't like. And I decided this genre sucks. And so I was reading dystopians and contemporaries and anything that wasn't fantasy. And then my brother, who has never been a reader, and I've always been a reader, found Brandon Sanderson and would not shut up about the guy. And, I wanted to interact with my brother about one of my favorite things. So he was like, Mistborn, 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 Mistborn. And I finally tried it. And it changed everything. And then I was like obsessed with finding another Mistborn and tried out as many fantasy books as I could. And it was really in YA fantasy at the time, which, you know, no hate towards YA fantasy. I read YA, I love YA. But YA fantasy and adult fantasy are two very different things. And I couldn't find something to match Mistborn, which I think is a really great bridge fantasy series between YA and adult. And I didn't like any of the YA I was picking up. And so I finally found more adult fantasy that was, it was my niche, like the high fantasy, the epic fantasy, like the stuff that I thought I hated, the intense world building, like the really complex magic systems, all these things that I thought were info dumps before. And then I see them executed well. And I realized, no, this is like what I live for now.
So some people do prefer their magic systems just to be info dumped at the beginning of a story rather than slowly parsed out. Do you fall more into the slowly nuanced parse out category, or do you want this to, here's how it works? Like Mistborn begins with Kelsier essentially being like, here it is.
Yeah, done. I'd say that info dumps are rarely a negative thing to me, unless they're executed horribly. But I like information, and I like it at the beginning. Like, for instance, Robert Jordan dishes out his world building and his explanations of his magic, and this character is this thing, you know, like Daggum Celine. These, like, he explains stuff so slowly, and it kills me. And Patrick Rothfuss, obviously Jordan Rothfuss, two very different authors. Patrick Rothfuss does not tell me about his magic, and it kills me because his magic is so cool. So yeah, I like laws, and I like rules, and I like bounds, and then I like for you to keep within those. Obviously, every reader does. But yeah, it kills me when I don't know the boundaries of the world and the magic system, and we're a couple books in, and I still don't have my head wrapped around it. So I don't feel like I need info dump, but it is hard for me when I feel like the author is keeping his cards really close to his chest and knows a lot more than I know. Like, I think Sanderson does a great job of telling me so much at the start and giving me all his rules and all his boundaries and never changing those rules or breaking those rules, but building on it within the rules so that it's still shocking and surprising. But I never feel like you could add something like with Rothfuss. I love his magic, but I think he could add whatever he wants at any point in time and it would be okay because I have no boundaries on his magic system. You know what I mean?
So soft magic systems in general are a no-go for you.
Oh, it's hard. I mean, like, I love Harry Potter like everybody else does, but...
Well, that's not the softest magic system ever.
It's not the softest. You're
some boundaries on it. Not a lot, but there's some.
Yes. Yes. I can do soft magic systems, but I don't like to.
So I have to ask more about this because you brought it up and it's my channel. You just finished The Great Hunt. You have not started book 3.
Not yet.
Okay. So do you mind giving a little sneak review? Because my audience loves when people are at various parts of the series and giving their thoughts so far. You don't know who Celine is or what the wider story is there yet. What are your takeaways from Wheel of Time so far? Current thoughts, excitement for the future? Yeah,
I mean, it's brilliant. It's a huge cast of characters, and I mostly love everyone. I'm not fully sold on Rand, but I mostly love everyone. I think everyone's more interesting than him. But I love Nynaeve. I'm very interested in Perrin. Matt's a butt, but I expect to see some character growth from him. Yeah, the characters are loyal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, love his character. I think I focus mostly on the characters when I think about the series because I don't understand the world yet. And so I just lean on them a lot with how I think about Wheel of Time. But what I know of the magic and the vastness of this world and the potential for each character as we continue to unravel like who Perrin is and the extent of what's going on with him and Daggum Celine and the extent of what's going on with her, like each of these characters, knowing how much room there is for each of them to be something is so interesting to me. And it's something that I just wish my head could wrap around. So I'm excited to read more because I need that more information so that I can see the potential of what these characters in this world could be.
So tying back to something we said earlier, on the scale of magic systems, you have Brandon Sanderson, I think, on the hardest magic systems. That's what he's all about. He's just, these are the rules, these are a set. And then you have more of the Harry Potter over here where it's a lot more mushy. Robert Jordan to me is kind of off the scale a slight bit because he doesn't give you 100% of the answers while things are happening with the magic, but the hard rules do exist.
Oh yeah,
he
for sure.
Doesn't tell you all the time. There's at the end of the series, there are still a couple things you will not know how they were done, but you have to just trust. And it's stated by Harriet and people like that, that in his ungodly pages of notes that are out there, the answer exists. Sure. Does that bother you because it feels a bit more like a soft magic system? Or does it not
I think that will drive me nuts when I'm at the end and I ask you and I ask, can't think of his name. He's in both of our Discords.
Which there's a lot of
Noshi?
Noshi, yeah.
Noshi. Okay. When I ask you and I ask Noshi and I ask Jade, when I ask people that know this series like the back of their hands, okay, so this still doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it? And you're like, oh, it doesn't make sense to me either. Like, that's gonna kill me. Like for instance, Tolkien, like we got the Silmarillion, right? And that answered a lot of questions that I had. It's gonna kill me that I don't have a Silmarillion for Robert Jordan's work. But as long as I'm okay with intentional open-endedness that feels right to the story. I actually like a little bit of that. But if it's just straight up like, here's a gap in the world that I have an answer to, but you don't get, like, that'll kill me.
I don't think there's anything like that.
Okay.
But have you managed to avoid spoilers altogether?
Yes.
Good. That's really impressive because there's a lot out there. And I would strongly recommend you do not Google characters because Google autofill just spoils things multiple times.
Well, being adverse to social media helps me never get spoiled for anything ever.
Says the YouTuber.
Yeah, that's true. I actually was recently spoiled in my comment section because people suck. But other than that, I've never been spoiled for anything.
On my live chat today, I accidentally said something that I should not.
Oh no!
Thrones. It's the first time I've ever spoiled something for my audience, and I felt really, really bad. I'm not going to say it here, but oh man. Okay, transitioning into a bit more of the technical side of things. You've recently started actually recording audiobooks, which is incredibly cool, and I think many people who listen to audiobooks like myself, like I idolize Kate Redding and Michael Kramer.
Oh my gosh.
They are artists, without a doubt.
100%.
Could you talk about that process so far, how it feels to narrate a book? What really is the biggest hurdles for you so far?
Yeah. Speaking on the positive, as strange as it is to say, I get more into the book when I'm acting it out than I do when I'm reading it, which who would have thought that something could top the experience of being fully immersed in reading a book? But like, narrating fiction is acting, right? Like you have to get into a character's head, you have to give them a voice, you have to bring all the emotion of the scene to the scene. And especially if I'm in a really intense scene, like I just recorded a thriller and I'm currently working on another thriller. And when there's a really intense scene, I get so into it that after I'm done recording, I'm disoriented. It takes me a minute to realize, oh, I'm still sitting on the floor of my closet, like recording. So it's been a really great experience to get a different level of being immersed in a story. The negatives, the technical side of it is rough, especially as an at-home narrator. So if you're Michael Kramer, then you go to a studio and you have a team. You've got your narrator, and then you have an editor, and you have a sound engineer. And when you narrate at home, you are 4 people. You're a narrator, an editor, sound engineer, and a quality assurance manager. It runs through quality assurance, but you got to make sure it's going to pass. That has sucked. Narrating and editing, cool, no problem. Sound engineering, not something I thought I'd have to learn. Quality assurance has also taken some learning, but it's not that bad. So just learning the different sides of it, that sound engineering. I think the problem is that I started out with the lowest end setup that you can have, which means that there's more post-processing to do at the end to get it to pass, which I just ordered an entirely new setup, upgrading everything because the post-processing, it's not something that you want to saturate your audio with a lot of. So you want to get it right on the front end instead of fixing it on the back end. So it's been a big learning curve, but the authors that I work with have been really understanding and really helpful. And there's so many videos online. I've sunk so many hours into Reddit forums and videos and all that. So it's a big learning curve, but it's also something that I'm loving so daggone much.
I know a lot of people in my audience have talked about wanting to start something similar to that. Do you have any recommendations of just where to start?
Yes. I mean, ACX is the best place to get going. So I'm freelance. I work for me, but I work through ACX. ACX is owned by Amazon. Amazon also owns Audible, and ACX is like the middleman that connects narrators to authors, people that are looking for each other. That's a great place to start because ACX website has tutorials and learning videos there, and it can show you like, here's the home setup you need, here's a little bit about editing, here's a little bit about mastering the work. And then from there, you can have your head mildly wrapped around it and then go learn more from there. So I think just exploring the ACX website is a really good place to start. I Googled a lot of voice actors that have been doing it for a long time that have started teaching. There are courses online that you can find that are completely free. There's so many resources out there, but the truth is that with narrating, you are your own teacher. So you have to find people that know more than you, that have made the resources available. And your voice, your equipment, and your environment are all variables. So anything anybody tells you about the post-processing side of things, about what mic is best, about any of these things, they're telling you about their setup and their voice. And you then can take what they've taught you about specifically the post-processing stuff, and then you have to play with decimals. Literally, okay, I've done this, and now when I do this, it knocks this outside of the ACX qualification brackets. So now I need to adjust this by 1 decimal and then try this again and see where that goes. Now I can move on to the next step. But this now knocks this out. So you have to learn about the process of it all so that you can play with decimals and figure out what's going to work for your environment. So it's not something that you do casually. It's something that you really have to spend time learning, and you have to be willing to commit to it. But that's not to scare anyone away from it, because it's amazing. Like, I love doing it, but it is hard, and you have to teach yourself to an extent.
Well, that's really, really interesting. And it's funny how many people out there talk about wanting to narrate books, and there's so many books I wish were in Audible format, because I like to hybrid read between the two sometimes, which is an expensive preference, but it's what I do enjoy. As everyone knows, the narrator can make or break the experience. But I will go ahead and say, and I've said this before, and I get backlash every time I do, the Wheel of Time is better in audiobook form because Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are so damn good at what they do. They elevate the material instead of drag it down. And there are narrators who do, in my opinion, it's like I have to get through this person and try to get to the material. Yep. I got pleasantly surprised with Pet Sematari's audiobook is done by Michael C. Hall. And if there's anyone whose voice is designed to do Stephen King's stuff, it's Dexter. But that really worked well. All right. So how long have you been doing that exactly?
It's been about a month and a half, not long at all. So I'm still learning.
You have 3 books under your belt, though.
Yeah, I have 3 books that I've finished. I'm halfway through another, and then I have several more under contract and one that I started, but I'm still pretty early on.
Very cool. What are you currently reading? I got to ask everybody that who comes on.
Currently reading, I just started Skyward. I'm 100 pages in by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah. And Eleanor Oliphant is Just Fine is probably what that book is called. It's like a hard-hitting contemporary. I think it deals with like mental illness and abuse. But I'm not very deep into it, so don't quote me on that. And then I'm also reading one book that I'm narrating. Oh, and Death Note, a graphic or a manga. I'm 6 volumes in.
Okay, very cool. And I was supposed to start every fantasy chat by asking this question, and I forgot to ask this, so we're going to do it now. What was your first fantasy/sci-fi book that got you into the genres?
Well, the first time, back when I was a kid,
That's the one we're looking for here.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know, to be honest, because I can't remember the title of most of my childhood favorites. Like, I can picture the covers and I could tell you the basic plot line, but I don't remember the titles. But I can tell you that I loved Inkheart, Charlie Bone, obviously Harry Potter, Aragon. These were my childhood stuff as well.
Everyone in our generation read Aragon. Everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. I mean, I don't know how it would hold up now, but as a 15-year-old, that was my first taste of high fantasy, you know? And that like was awesome. That was something different than anything else I had read. And really complex stuff a lot of times.
I've said before, and I'll say it again, Christopher Paolini as a kid, he pulled very blatantly from other authors, but what resulted in that is it's like the perfect intro to fantasy for young readers, because you're going to tell you about everything you should expect in fantasy, because he just took all these fantasy elements and crafted a story out of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it walked those beats, but it's well done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And reading, well, for instance, even reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, I was like, wow, J.K. Rowling pulled a lot from the Lord of the Rings. Like, everybody pulls from Lord of the Rings, right? Reading The Eye of the World for the first time, I was like, oh man, this is so similar to Aragon that I've been spoiled by Aragon for what's coming next in The Eye of the World. So yes, Paolini pulled a lot from other books. But I don't know that I could have read The Eye of the World as a 15-year-old with no other experience with high fantasy. Not that you can't, I just don't think I could have. So Aragon gave me what I needed at that time.
So you're saying Aragon pulled so closely from Wheel of Time, in your opinion, that it almost made Wheel of Time seem predictable?
Yeah, well, certain elements did. Like, there were certain parts, especially at the beginning of the Wheel of Time, that was like exactly the way things went with Aragon. And I've read the Inheritance Cycle, Aragon. I've read them so many times that I can quote them to you. I mean, I haven't read them recently, but, you know, as a teen. And so I know those books. And so when I read The Eye of the World, there were things that were happening at the beginning that I was like, oh no, this is chapters of like exactly what happened, how Aragon started. And so I actually predicted, like I wrote it down. I was like, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and this is going to, and all the things happened. They all happened. And then they went in different directions and I could no longer do that. But yeah, Paolini pulled from Eye of the World, Something Fierce to start Aragon.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if Paolini pulled from Eye of the World or Fellowship of the Ring, because Robert Jordan pulled from Fellowship of the Ring so intensely that it's, you know, well, he deliberately set out to do that. He said in an interview, I wanted Emond's Field to feel like the Shire. I wanted it to be those beat for beat recreations. And then from those initiating incidents, branch off to what he think would realistically happen. Because he doesn't think it would be like Lord of the Rings, where it's just like, oh golly, we got to go on this journey. Let's go. It'd be a lot more hard than that.
Can you tell me the physical appearance of the dark ones? I don't really know what they're called in the Lord of the Rings. The physical appearance of them. Do they look like Trollocs?
I'm sorry, the dark ones? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about either. It's been a hot minute since I've read the Lord of the Rings. But... Sorry?
The Nazgul? The ring wraiths?
Yeah. Those. Can you tell me the physical appearance? Do they look like Trollocs?
No, they're definitely more similar to Murdral. Orcs look like Trollocs in some ways.
Okay.
Orcs are just twisted, destroyed, demonic elves. They've been tainted and made into these things. Meanwhile, the wraiths are corrupted men who were given power rings, and it turned them into literal wraiths.
Yeah.
And
so Trollocs are like beaked creatures with like long claws, and they're hunched over. Yeah. Okay. Trollocs and Razak from Aragon, same thing.
Yeah,
they look exactly the same. They act exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and assume that Trollocs, if we ever hear them speak, they speak with a long S. Like, they're the same creature. So stuff like that, where I know it's the Eye of the World because I don't remember reading those physical descriptions when I read The Lord of the Rings. You know what I'm saying? Well,
you have heard a Trolloc talk. You finished Eye of the World. Narg talks, and he talks to Rand.
And he did the long S. Ha! I forgot about that. No, he totally did. He totally did.
I need to double check on that.
Maybe I'm just too in my head, but I thought he had a weird speech pattern like that.
Can I give you the mildest of spoilers real quick? You will never deal with a talking Trolloc ever again. It's a one-off in the series. It's weird. I don't know why Robert Jordan put that there.
Okay.
They are never conversing with people again, and all fans are just like, I don't know.
Okay, cool. So then Celine's definitely not Trolloc. That's good to know.
How would Celine be a Trolloc?
I don't know. I've guessed it all with that woman.
Fair enough. Yeah, you seem very confused, and I really think that's hilarious, and I've enjoyed it. No, it's Eye of the World is I like his initial concept of let's take Lord of the Rings, except Robert Jordan grew up in the country and he was like, that's not how farm boys would react to someone telling them I need to leave home. So let's write the actual story of that. And then I've said The Great Hunt to me feels more like a heist chase book than a fantasy book in a lot of ways. And it's also the first real introduction to magic systems outside the main magic system and the Wheel of Time. Well, you get introduced to the Wolf Brothers in Eye of the World, but it's not fully explored until Perrin starts but I won't dive too much into Wheel of Time. And what I wanted to ask you about was you've recently started diving into sci-fi, and I know my audience, you guys are not the biggest sci-fi fans. I am. I gotta ask, how has your experience with sci-fi been so far?
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure that it's going to be a genre that I'm going to love. Like I love fantasy and a couple of other genres, but it's like I started with Dune. Maybe not the best place in the world to start. But I then went on to Ender's Game, which you hate, and I really enjoyed. So I don't know. We'll see. I feel like sci-fi can oftentimes be the most info dumpy thing that I've ever read. Especially when they're like, let me tell you how this spacesuit works for 15 pages. And I'm like, oh man, didn't care about that. Or like Martian, like, let me tell you how to grow a potato on Mars. And I'm like, okay, sure, sounds fun. But I love like and I'm in Skyward right now, which is, so far not very sci-fi. We'll see how far we get. It's Sanderson, so I'm sure he'll get into details. But anyway, I think that I love space and exploring space. I'm very interested in space, and all sci-fi is in space, obviously. I loved Frankenstein.
That is, for listeners not aware, sorry, I have to say this. Frankenstein is widely considered one of the first sci-fi books ever told, and a lot of people don't realize that. So sorry.
Yeah, people consider her like the author of sci-fi, the inventor of sci-fi, a lot of times. So yeah, there are some classic sci-fis that I've loved. So I think that I have the potential. I think it's just, I don't know. I just don't know yet if it's going to be something that I'm going to love or something that I'm going to casually enjoy.
The one I recommend to everyone, but no one picks up, is Bob Verse. I think Bob Verse is the most charming, amazing sci-fi story, and I love it, but no one cares.
Well, I will prove you wrong, and I will pick that one up now.
Thank you. It's only on Audible as far as I've ever seen. I think I've seen paperbacks, but it's like an Audible original thing. It's straight.
Okay.
So okay, you've liked sci-fi. You have started with my least favorite sci-fi stories. I will forever get hate comments for not liking Dune, but I'm sorry, it's not sci-fi. It's sci-fantasy, and it's not good sci-fantasy.
I think it's potentially good. It's just not well executed.
Great ideas, and I think standard setting for its time, but it just hasn't aged well because everything in it's been done better now.
Yeah, it's so dry, so hard to read, but such a cool concept.
To me, I heard one of my roommates in college describe it as someone reading you the story of a complex board game that was played. And I thought that was weirdly accurate.
You know what it is? Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. It feels like, the way I described it was, it feels like I was listening to someone tell the story that someone had read to them. Like it felt so far removed from the actual story as I was reading it. Maybe I'll try again someday, but it was hard.
I will not. So you also moved on to Ender's Game, which is one of my least favorite as well. I don't know why you started with my two like least favorite, but also popular sci-fi books.
I don't know.
But yeah, I was not a fan of Ender's Game. And that just really comes down to, I think I just went in with a bad mindset. I'm willing to admit that because I know the author is a gigantic tool bag, and that does affect my enjoyment sometimes. I'm willing to admit that. And I also had the ending spoiled. So it was like,
oh man, the ending was pretty awesome for me because I did not see it coming at all.
Have you seen the movie?
No.
It's the definition of eh.
Oh, shucks. I was actually considering watching it, which is a big deal because I don't watch a lot of movies.
It's got Harrison Ford in it, and Harrison Ford, like the last decade of his acting, has just been him. Like his acting performance looks like a guy who's like, "Am I paid yet? Am I going to get paid?" It's just kind of that.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know who that is.
You don't know who Harrison Ford is.
I'm telling you, I don't watch movies. I don't know who 90% of people are.
He plays Han Solo.
I haven't seen Star Wars.
Well, okay, moving on. We're not gonna talk about that because every time Star Wars is mentioned, the comment section explodes into hatred-fueled violence.
I don't dislike it. I'm not a hater. I just haven't taken the time to sit down and watch it.
Oh no, it's not about liking or hating. If you just say the word Star Wars, a comment section will explode.
Oh, cool. Sounds like fun. Makes me want to watch it.
Are you much of a comic book reader?
No, I'm not. But again, not a hater. I just haven't done it. I haven't read any.
Okay, but you're starting manga, however it's said.
Manga, yeah. I have started manga. I'm really enjoying it. I'm super surprised because I've read several graphic novels and not liked anything. And so, well, I guess there was one that I mildly enjoyed. So I just didn't think that that was the medium for me. So getting into manga, it was one of those like, okay, for my subscribers, I'll give it a go. And I love it. So I'm willing to try comic books, but I almost feel like the reason I didn't like graphic novels was because they never gave the detail, the depth, character depth, world depth that a novel can give, right? And so I just assumed manga was the same thing, but manga just delivers it differently and still gives a lot of emotion, a lot of depth. Comic books, I almost feel like, and I could be wrong, because again, I've never tried them, but I feel like it's behind manga in that it would give less depth. But you can build these complex worlds through the movies, build these complex worlds from the magazines. Nope, comic books. So I assume that I'm wrong, that they do have depth that I just haven't explored yet.
Okay. I mean, I'm not the biggest comic book fan. I've read quite a few. I do like them, but I think I've reviewed 2 or 3 on my channel. The only one I don't typically love like Marvel DC storylines unless they're really self-contained, not issue after issue after issue things. But the ones I do recommend are there's some great ones that are really experimental, and I often I won't even read some of them. I just appreciate the artwork. There's one comic book artist, Christian Ward, who just does these really beautiful watercolor comics that are astounding. And I have one of his called ODYC. I've read it. It's a fine story. It's a retelling of the Iliad and the Odyssey in space, but the art style in it is just amazing. And I dig it for that. I'm a nerd.
No, that's awesome. I really do need to give comic books a try because I'm the type of person that I will rarely ever trash an entire genre, especially if I haven't tried it. It's just that I love so many things that it's hard for me sometimes to get out of my box and try something that I haven't spent much time in.
Okay. And I need to ask you about a controversial opinion that you and I share. And
Okay.
I'd like to see, because you have not suffered the backlash I did. I went through the comment section on your video.
Oh, no.
You also do not like Patrick Rothfuss's second book,
No.
A Wise Man's Fear.
Yeah.
And your comment section was so nice. It was people just like, I get it. And I think it's because I was a bit of an ass in mine.
People went in mad at you because you hated book 1. And with me, I think people went in knowing that I loved book 1. And so knowing that I wasn't hate reading book 2. So that may be a factor.
I did hate read book 2. There's undoubtedly a fact. I hate read it because I hated the first one. Because after I finished the first one, I was like, he's not going to be able to finish this. He has no idea where it's going. And then book 2, I was like, he's not going to be able to finish this. He has no idea where it's going.
Oh, man, I agree. Sucks. It sucks because I went into book 2 expecting it to be 5 stars because book 1 was such a 5-star book for me. And then book 2, I was like, oh yeah, we're in it. I'm so excited. And then it took a left turn and then took another left turn and then took another left turn and then another one. And somehow we hadn't come full circle and there were so many left turns. And I just like, by the end, I was so mad because I was like, I can't even believe in him to redeem this. It's so disappointing. I was so disappointed.
You loved the first one. And would you say the first one is worth reading?
I think so.
What'd you end up giving the second one star-wise?
2 or 2.5.
Okay. So not the worst thing ever, but you just really didn't like it.
Yeah, I think that it had some good qualities to it, but I think that the bad really outweighed it. And I just don't like, he says that book 3 is going to be shorter than book 2, and yet you have 10 years to cover, and you have like, you didn't answer a single question with book 2. You only added more questions, and you want to answer all of them in book 3 and keep your writing style and keep your pacing and make it shorter. I can't imagine how. It's really bummed me out.
So I will say a nice thing about Patrick Rothfuss's writing that I do 100% believe in terms of his writing style and the effort he puts into all of his sentences. Like, he writes poetry within that book, and he's
a phenomenal writer. And if he promised 2, 3, 4 more books to the series, then I would call book 2 middle book syndrome, move on, be excited for book 3. But because he has 1 book left, I don't know how to have hope in that book. If he had multiple books left, I'd be thrilled and I'd be excited to see what he was going to do with the series. I just can't see, with book 2 being such a nothing book, I can't see how book 3 is going to be satisfying.
In my dream world, Patrick Rothfuss would just put down King Killer Chronicles and just pick up writing the Game of Thrones show, so the dialogue's not so bad anymore.
I've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones, so I can't discuss it.
You are the most diehard book fan, and I appreciate that. When everyone else is watching Netflix, you're just sitting there like, books.
Yeah, so you're not wrong.
I think my TV is now pretty much restricted to Game of Thrones, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and occasionally, I watch way too much YouTube. That's my problem now. I watch a lot of YouTube.
That's fair. I dive into the YouTube hole sometimes.
Yeah. So you don't watch that much YouTube as a YouTuber?
No, I don't. I try to watch a decent amount of BookTube, like 1 or 2 videos a day, just to like not be isolated from the community that I love so much. But no, I'm just not like a screen person. I don't enjoy phones. I don't enjoy social media. I'm like 80, and I don't know how to not be. Like, before I had my kid and I realized it was important for me to be somewhat secure, I had a flip phone because I didn't want a mini computer. I just wanted something that made calls. Like, I don't know, man.
Maybe you won't be a sci-fi fan just because you hate what they'll be talking about. A lot of sci-fi is to talk about technology and ideas.
No, but I love the concept of ideas, and like, I'm learning how to daggum produce an audiobook. So it's not like I hate technology. It's just that I just don't think that, like, and I don't hate movies or TV shows or anything like that. I feel like a lot of times people will feel offended because I don't care for movies. And so they're like, oh, you're saying that that's not as good or something, because it's the internet and everybody gets offended. But it's not that. It's just that it's just not a form of entertainment that appeals to me personally. And I don't know, man. I enjoy fiction, obviously. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Is there any book series that if it was adapted, you would have to watch the show?
I think if any Sanderson stuff was adapted, I would at least give it a go. I think that I would be more likely to try a TV show than a movie, because sitting down and watching something for 2 hours, like, continuously, is really an exhausting experience for me. But like TV shows, it's a little bit more concise, and then you can come back to it whenever you feel like it. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times with movies, I'll have to split it up into 4 parts that I'll span over like a year. So, or I just won't finish it because it's too long. You know what I mean? I wish I liked movies more, because I feel like it's a conversation blocker for a lot of people that I don't enjoy the same medium that most people enjoy.
You've probably had the same conversation a lot, which is people, you don't watch these movies, you haven't seen this movie, and that's probably something you go through quite a bit, I imagine.
Yeah, like, most people that I interact with are like, okay, she doesn't watch movies, we won't make movie references. No big deal. And there are some shows that I watch, like, I have watched The Office and Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so it's not like, but these are like background shows while I'm editing videos. I can't ever just sit down and watch something. The honest truth is that TV shows, movies, like, sitting down and watching something triggers my anxiety so bad that I spiral. And so I just don't mess with it. It's not something that calms me. It's something that makes me really anxious.
Fair enough. All right, I get it. I get it. Now shifting back to fantasy chat, I need to do a better job of moderating my own conversation. So, is there any fantasy series that you, as a, I'm affiliated with Wheel of Time, which it's a byproduct of me loving it so much.
You like Wheel of Time?
Oh, yeah, surprising, right?
Wow, cool.
Is there any series that you would you consider like your safety series, what you would just go back and read at any point and just always like your comfort food book? Does that exist?
Yeah, that used to be Harry Potter for me, but I'd say that's now Mistborn.
Wow, so it got overthrown. I very rarely hear people say theirs can be overthrown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Harry Potter was for me from like the publication of like the second book. I was on board that early. From book 2 until a year ago, I would say Harry Potter was my #1 series. And now, yeah, for sure. Because I don't even know that I would call Mistborn. I would think that I love Stormlight more than Mistborn. But I think that Mistborn is more rereadable, bingeable. Not that Stormlight's not rereadable, it's just a lot more of a commitment. Whereas Mistborn, it's like, oh, I'll pick this up, I'll be done with it in a week, no big deal. Yeah.
Something I do appreciate is I see quite a few people on your channel who will comment that they found you because of Harry Potter, and then you've acted as a gateway to introducing them to a lot of other fantasy works. Because Harry Potter, I feel like, is a very secular, might be the right word, fantasy series where people are very devout to that. They love Harry Potter, and you'll find a whole lot of them have never read other fantasy.
So Harry Potter, that was like a fluke. I made this unpopular Harry Potter opinions video right when the most recent Harry Potter video, one of the new ones, what are they called? Fantastic Beasts movies, which I haven't seen any of them. Right when one of them, the most recent one came out, and like everybody was disappointed and everybody was hating on J.K. Rowling and the series as a whole. I made this unpopular opinions video. So people that were mad and wanted to hate on Harry Potter visited that video. And then people that were tired of people hating on Harry Potter and wanted to be mad at me went to that video. So everybody was at my video. And that was stressful.
Did you just get a deluge of negativity? It sounds like it.
Oh man, it was like it was the worst experience I've had since making a YouTube channel. But it ended up being positive after people stopped watching that video because, there were the people that just like yelled at me and then left. And then there were the people that were like, hey, I wonder what else she has to say. And then clicked on other videos and subscribe. And I gained a lot of really amazing subscribers through that experience. And it was a lot of people that have never read anything but Harry Potter, or that have not read anything since they were in high school, or, that sort of thing. And so like Harry Potter is on a pedestal for them, and Harry Potter is it for them. And there is no book that will live up to it. And then I won't shut up about Mistborn and The Lies of Locklemore and, these other series that I love so much. And they finally are like, maybe I should try reading again. And it's like they've discovered BookTube, they've rediscovered reading because they stumbled on one abstract video of mine. And it's been a great experience for me. It's been really amazing having people actually reach out to me and say like, hey, you've made me fall in love with reading. And like, that's something that I never thought that I could do for someone. The gaining of the subscribers was hard, but the people that stuck around have been such amazing people for me. Well, and then there's people that are like, you hate on Harry Potter too much. I'm like, it's in my top 5 series. I love Harry Potter. I don't know what you're talking about. I just don't think that it's like the best thing that's ever happened to the world.
There's just a lot of hate for Harry Potter, and a lot of it's not deserved. There is some recent things where some backlash is definitely needed, but the original Harry Potter series is without a doubt a classic that, I put it in my top 10 list. It deserves its spot to be one of the best series of all time. And I do appreciate what J.K. Rowling there on another level, because I feel like there is a whole generation of readers who would have never picked up fantasy or maybe even just books as a kid without what she handed them. And then, it's funny to see just occasionally a series explode. There was a few obvious examples from when I was younger. I think the earliest I remember is Harry Potter, then Twilight, then Hunger Games, and then Game of Thrones, obviously. Divergent I entirely missed out on. I think all those series, the only ones I've read are Harry Potter and A Song of Ice and Fire. But I was not aware of Divergent. I thought it was originally a movie. So that was my bad. But it's like impossible to predict which ones will blow up. Because if like,
Oh yeah.
in terms of quality, like if I look at if I look at every series I've read, I don't understand why something like Gentlemen Bastards doesn't sell like Harry Potter.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You and
For
I have
sure.
both heaped praise on that story pretty much nonstop, but I don't understand how it's not held up like A Song of Ice and Fire. Like it's almost perfect at what it's trying to do. Like it set out to tell a certain story, and it told it magnificently.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like I think most stories I could say, okay, if you like this, you'll like this. With The Lies of Lucky Moore, the closest I can get to that is if you liked this, that was a cheap knockoff of this. So just get the good stuff. You know what I mean? Like I can't think of any storytelling quality and friendship and like I just think it's unmatched in so many ways. Like I'm on my way to making the Gentleman Bastard series up there or even surpassing Mistborn and Stormlight because I love them so much. Even though the world building, the magic system are very different from Sanderson. Like they're practically non-existent because it's about the characters and their actions and the consequences of those actions. And I love it so much.
Well, I find it similar to, and I'm sorry to bring it up again, Wheel of Time, where it's a story about relationships. It's a story about these characters going through it together. Locke and John have the best chemistry of any two fantasy characters I have ever read together in a book. I have no idea how Scott Lynch captured it so well, but it feels like you're reading like a Turk, JD, Joey, Chandler level friendship in this book, and it feels that well realized.
Yeah, I will say that Gimli. Yeah, Legolas and Gimli are like right up there with them for me, even though they don't get as much page time, obviously, as Locke and Jean, because the story's about Locke and Jean. But they are right up there for me. I love them so much.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's been forever since I've read Lord of the Rings, so I'm not fresh in my memory. Just to remember their chemistry.
Yeah.
On the page. And you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan, correct? You've read it the whole series.
No, I've only read the whole series one time, but it's recently enough that I remember it fairly well.
You're the only person I think I can remember hearing saying you enjoyed reading The Silmarillion.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a hard start. I think that if you give up quickly, then yeah, it's a terrible experience. But if you push through, like there's so much gold in there. I mean, you get a lot more depth to the world and all that kind of stuff, but there are stories in there that are absolutely devastating and heartbreaking and will take you through so many emotions. Like it's so much goodness in the Silmarillion, even though there's some dry stuff too.
That's fair. That's fair. And I love, like, in terms of fantasy talking online, obviously Wheel of Time is my bread and butter, but the community around Lord of the Rings, I find to be one of the most like wholesome, nice communities online. They all are just so in love with Tolkien's work, and they just have these great conversations about it. And my one big gripe with the Lord of the Rings movies is that they never addressed why giving the ring to the Eagles was a bad idea, which is addressed, and you should know that would be a horrible idea if you know the source material. But it is a plot hole in the movies because they never tell you why they didn't do that. So that whole meme, if you've read the books and the Silmarillion, you know, yeah, don't give those Eagles the ring. They'll be corrupted. They'll become ravens. Right. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it'd be a bad idea. Right. Whereas the movies is just like, you guys had planes the whole time? Like what the heck?
Right.
I don't know. That's probably my biggest gripe. Okay, well, I think the last thing and only thing I wanted to ask you about was just as a brief reflection on being a booktuber from starting out at 0 subs to where you are now. Is there any advice you'd give to someone who's starting? If someone was about to start a booktube channel tomorrow, what would you say in terms of advice for how to kick it off?
Yeah, I can't really give advice on how to grow, but I can give advice on how I think, at least for me, how to enjoy it to the best of your ability. And that's that for me. I mean, it's easy to say, don't care about the subs and like, don't care about your numbers and that stuff. But the honest truth is for me, my priority has been to keep my subscribers happy. And I've watched so many videos that people have put out about like how to grow your channel, how to get more numbers, that sort of thing. And that's valid. And I think that if you have something to say and you want to discuss things with people, wanting there to be people there to listen to you is a really reasonable thing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to grow your channel. But for me, it's always just been, am I putting out content that I'm proud of and that I love? And am I valuing my subscribers, that they would feel like they're a part of the conversation? And so for me, it's always been, if my, like when I read my comment section, I have my Goodreads up in the next tab. And so if somebody recommends a book to me, I immediately copy that book, paste it in Goodreads, look up the description, and either add it or don't add it. But almost all of my favorite books have come to me by my subscribers' recommendations, because it's so important to me that they know my taste, you know? And so I want them to feel like I care, because I do. And, you know, I have a series of videos where I have a series of polls up in the video where I'm having a discussion, but as I'm discussing things, I'll say, and what do you guys think? Here's the poll. You get to vote in poll number 2 this time. And so they'll vote along with me, and then we'll revisit that discussion and things like that, where it's really interactive, asking them, okay, I want to get into this genre. Tell me your favorite books in this genre, stuff like that. It's just, to me, to make the experience the best is to interact the most. People have capacities for different things. People are busy at different levels. People want to make time for what they want to make time for. Do it how you want. But for me, the best thing has been to put out stuff that I care about, and to make sure my subscribers know that I care about them. And that has made my comment section one of the most positive places in the world. Anytime I put out a negative review, anytime I don't know, have something controversial to say, it just seems like I'm received in a way that always surprises me, because my subscribers know that I care about them. And so when I am saying something negative about a book or something like that, they know where I'm coming from, and they don't get as, and I'm not saying like to avoid anger or something, but just, it's just a really great environment. And I feel like quality over quantity, just having an environment that you love coming back to each time, is a lot more important than what are my numbers at now. And again, those numbers are, they are relevant. They are important. You want to talk to people, so you want people to be there. But I feel like making them feel valued has been the best choice I've made for my channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that question so well. And honestly, oh, hey, he always makes an appearance right at the end. I don't know why.
He's actually been hanging out on the couch this entire time.
Oh, he has?
Dancing, and yeah, he's been great.
Okay, well, at least you've been entertained by him.
I have a question for you before we quit.
Sure.
And you can cut this if you want.
No.
When are you going to tell your subscribers about the collab we have coming up?
That is coming very soon. I just literally haven't, because I've been trying to focus on like 80 things. And once I'm more able to fully answer all the questions and things that I think will come when I talk about that. Because I think a lot of people will say, Daniel, you're already working a job and doing this channel. Do you really have time for that? And I'll answer, yes. You don't know me. So I won't cut this. People, you will find out what we're talking about soon. Murph and I are both putting something together.
Suspense is building.
Right? I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, something's coming down the road. You guys should be excited for it. And I appreciate you being on, Merphy Napier. You should go check out her channel and like and subscribe, because she has some of the best booktube content out there. And Pips, if you bite that cord again, people don't like it.
The slippers. Is that the threat we're going with this time?
No, I've stopped the slippers threat. Now it's a scarf.
Oh, great.
But thank you so much for being on, Murph. He wants to damage my lapel mic. And I will talk to everyone on the channel when I get back from Puerto Rico. That's not how you say that word. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we head off?
I'm set.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you guys again soon.